Good morning and welcome to Inside the Hive for Friday, August the 28th. I'm Chris Morales and I'm the Regional Director for BNI Golden Horseshoe and Niagara. This morning I thought I'd share my thoughts on a topic that I get asked about an awful lot, and that is how to leverage the BNI membership that you've entered into, the relationship you've entered into. So this morning I'm going to talk a little bit about who's in your room. It's actually the topic of a book that the founder of BNI, Dr. Ivan Meisner, wrote. And the fundamentals of that book are essentially these: relationships and referrals. Now, my experience with both began a couple of years before Dr. Meisner founded BNI. It was my first job out of college. I had just graduated from Conestoga College in Kitchener, broadcast program. I was my first job actually radio sales, commission sales. And I started at a time when, and for those of us who have long memories, or maybe you just read the history, interest rates for loans, credit cards were running around 29 or 30%. Mortgages were 21%. And there was a housing crisis. So talk about challenging economic times to be in commission sales and selling something as ephemeral as radio advertising. I was fortunate, though, that I had a boss who was in our room as salespeople. He was in our room, and he believed in building relationships. In those days, we called it relationship selling. And his idea, not new then, certainly not new today, was that if you manage to get a customer, right, a really good customer, maintain that relationship, build a relationship, maintain it, because it's less expensive to maintain that relationship than to try and acquire a new customer. So that's often running, right? You go out and try and build relationships. But part two of that was equally important, if not more so. And his point was very simple. If you have a good relationship with a customer, ask them for a referral. Build a relationship on one side, gives you permission to ask for referrals. Talk about a good person to have in the room, right? First job coming out of college. Fast forward a little bit. We move forward to another trying economic time. The theme seems to be real estate, so let's stay with that. 2008, 9, 2009, 10, somewhere in that time frame, I find myself in Collingwood, Georgian Bay area. Had been living there for a little while, working in Toronto, but living up on the weekends, right? Doing that two-city thing. And unfortunately, as that recession hit, can we call it recession or do we just call it a financial crisis? Doesn't matter. The housing market went ape and out of work. Ad agency business that I found myself in at that time wasn't going very well. People were being laid off as we move forward. So what happens next? I'm out of work, got a house, got a wife, just bought it. Try to figure out now how to actually answer this question that my wife would pose to me. How do you make it work, Chris? How do you create some opportunity for income? So I did what any entrepreneurially minded or sales minded person would do. And that would be I resurrected a business that had been dormant for a little while. It was my digital marketing and social media business. But here's the conundrum. Here's the challenge. I'm an outsider in that market. I don't know anybody. Wasn't born there. Haven't been there very long. Got a new business, about 6 months in at this point. And I'm going, how do you grow that business? What do you do? Oh boy, networking events, Chamber of Commerce meetings, you name it. Tried absolutely everything to find a way to go back to what I felt was key to me, and that is to try and find places and people that I could build relationships with. Wasn't until I was invited to a breakfast meeting of BNI Georgian Triangle. They celebrate 30 years this year of being in business. And I was very fortunate to have an opportunity to have been with them for a number of years. Anyway, I get invited to breakfast. So by accident, someone I'd met in a chamber event up in Collingwood said, come on down for breakfast. I remember that morning so well. I said to my wife as I was leaving the house, back in a couple of hours, heading up to Collingwood, going for breakfast. Well, anyway, I get to this meeting. I don't know what to expect. I've never been to a BNI meeting at that point. It's something that is interesting, but of course, I've been to so many that this is just another one in a series of, right? Well, I walk in that room that morning and there were 23 people sitting around that big horseshoe table. And they welcomed me. They didn't look at me as an outsider. And I thought to myself, I maybe didn't say the words exactly, but I like the fact that the people in this room are interested in me. And that's an interesting one that Dr. Meisner talks about an awful lot. Be interested in people, not necessarily be interesting. And I thought, this is different than many of the other networking events that I had been to. And I thought, well, here's an opportunity to talk about what I do and have an opportunity for people to listen. And I went, man, this is something else. I just, I had a feeling that the people in that room were going to work for me because they kept talking about this giver's gain idea. I had no idea what that was at that point. But they kept talking about building relationships of trust. So anyway, I joined BNI that morning. Yeah, I'm one of those guys that when the visitor host said, "Are you a one, a two, or a three?" I was a one, and I joined right away. Back in the day, of course, it's paper applications. Who remembers those, right? I was all excited, right? I get home, and I burst in through the door, and I said to my wife, "Sally, it's great. We've got the answer. BNI, it's it. I've joined." Asked me a couple of questions, of course. How much did you spend, Chris? Remember, the business over here is trying to generate some revenue, and I've gone out to breakfast meeting only, and I come back spending a fair whack of money. She didn't say anything. She was so good. She said, "Well, that was a very expensive breakfast." Anyway, I'm off and running at this point with the weekly meetings in person back in the day, and I'm struggling. It's not going the way that I thought it would go. I'm doing everything right. I'm doing the one-to-ones. I'm standing up and bumbling through the weekly presentations. I'm going out trying to listen and find leads, and that's the word, right? I was trying to find leads. 3, 4 months go by, and nothing really is happening. No traction's going on. My mentor, though, Brian McMillan, he recently retired from the chapter. Saw him a few months ago, by the way, when I was up there at one of their events. Had to go up and see him. Anyway, Brian sits me down one Saturday morning and he asks some questions, as a good mentor always does. What's going on? How am I finding it? What's my experience in BNI? How's business? And I thought this morning, I've got nothing to lose here. This is not going the way I expected it. The business isn't going the way I'm hoping, and I'm coming to a precipice. It's going to get there pretty quickly if these things don't turn around. And he gave me 3 pieces of advice, and I share that every opportunity I get now in my current role as regional director. And, the fundamentals, basically. But he kind of tweaked it in a way that made sense then and makes sense today, all those years later. He said, first of all, your one-to-ones are coffee meetings. You're not getting anything done. So this is not a coffee meeting organization that we're in. This is an intentional organization that is here to help you build relationships of trust that allow you to give and get referrals. And it's kind of the first time I actually wrapped my head around that more than just rationally, kind of emotionally kind of picked up on that. He said, what you need to do is you need to go to those meetings prepared. The gains profile, right? Love that one. So I had to go back and dig into my gains and figure out how to make that really more effective than what I had been using before. Anyway, so when you go to that meeting, what you're trying to do is to explain to the person you're talking with, your member, your fellow member, what it is that you do as a benefit so they can understand what makes a good referral for you. That's it. They're going to do the same back to you. So you need to be listening now when it's their turn for what the solution is that they solve or the challenge that they help their customers overcome. So you can in turn give a good referral. Basic, right? Foundational stuff. I knew it, but it wasn't until he sits me down that I really kind of embraced that. Number 2, he said, your weekly presentations are garbage. You're coming in and you're bumbling and stumbling through what you do. Now, I'm in digital marketing, social media, and I'm telling people in the chapter, all about social media about 2 years after Facebook is launched. Nobody knows what's going on. It's confusing. Sounds like the AI conversation today, right? Everybody's talking AI, but what is it really doing for us? And he said, what you need to figure out, Chris, is what the benefit is to the members in the chapter of using social media. They don't get it. And I tell you, I had to go home and really kind of wrap my head around that one. And what I came back with was this. And I think it works today too. And I think every member should think about this from the perspective of what you do and what benefit you provide. What I came back with was, social media allows the members in the chapter to tell their story in a way that their customer can hear it more than just an ad, more than just a push message. It's an engagement medium, right? Why is that important? Because it helps with your image. It helps with your brand. It helps with everything. Eventually, it's going to help your reputation, and your reputation is what you're talking about, especially when we're trying to build relationships around trust. So once I started to do that, it became an educational moment for me in the chapter. Then the second part of that was, what's your ask? What are you specifically looking for? What kind of customer can benefit from that? Again, I've got to stop and think about, oh my God, how is that going to work, right? Anyway, I start to do those things. But then the third thing he said to me that morning was, you're not listening really well, are you? You're just listening to respond. You need to go out, and when you do your one-to-ones, you need to listen for what the pain point is. Is it a celebratory event your client's looking for, your partner's looking for, and therefore you can, right? Keep going. And he said, keep going down that path. So now I live in a new neighborhood. Everybody there is from outside Collingwood, outside Wasaga Beach area. All of us need painters. We need electricians. We need yard people. We need tree people. We need fencing. We need. All those people were in my chapter. Guess what I became? The go-to guy in my neighborhood for all the trades. Very quickly, I started to bring referrals to the room. And when I stop all these years later and I think about what the challenge is for a new member, that's always one of them that comes up. How do I bring referrals? All I did was listen without trying to respond. Bring it inside. Well, once I start bringing referrals and I educate my people better in my weeklies and I do better quality one-to-ones, still a few months go by and then the referrals start coming in. And I often get a little emotional about this. I'm going to try not to this morning, but what happened next was the single biggest referral that I got that actually saved the business, turned it around, came from my BNI chapter. And that for me was a game changer, transformational in terms of myself, my understanding of what relationship marketing was. And it's all coming from a mentor who is a member of my community. That's a person who's in my room. And that's when I really start to embrace that whole idea of who's in your room. Who are you letting in your room to help you and who you can help as well? Let's fast forward a little bit now. I go and leave that chapter, get a job back in Toronto, move back to Toronto, and I'm in advertising again, marketing. But let's go to last year, 2025. I have an opportunity to join BNI as regional director. And I'm not, I'm trying to figure out how to connect all this, right? You go back to 1982 when I started, through the recession of 2000, the financial crisis. And now here I am in 2025, another real estate debacle happening in and around the greater Toronto area, right? Housing prices were sky high. People are bidding on. My kids were involved in some of that too. And I was scared out of my mind watching them a couple of years prior. Then it crashes. Everybody's in turmoil. Everybody's in disarray. But we still have to try and make things work. So I get this opportunity to join BNI and I look at it and I go, yeah, this is going to be good. Because now I have an opportunity to come into chapters, talk to members about who's in your room. And when I go to chapter meetings, that's the very first thing that hits me. Who are the people around this table and what are they doing to build relationships so they can give and get referrals? And I come back to those three fundamentals: the intentional one-to-ones, the weekly presentations, and listening actively so you can understand. So there we are, relationship marketing, relationship, trust. That is it. That's what BNI does at its core. And I started this and I've talked about this so many times. Who's in your room? The bigger question to me today, who do you want in your room? That to me is the power of the BNI organization, the BNI chapter, the structure, everything around it. If you start to ask that question, when you think about the people who are there today and the people you'd like to see joining your chapter. So that's it. Who's in your room? I've got some time for questions. I have been recording. So if you two gentlemen are interested, you definitely can ask some questions, and then we'll take it from there.
Hey, good morning, Chris.